Time travel has not yet been invented, but 30 years from now, it will have been.
Yeah, I wrote the part for Joe. I wrote the script with Joe in mind, and we had stayed friends since we made Brick together, and we had just both been dying to work with each other again. And thank God he said yes.
Well, and also it's worth adding, that's a real honor, and that's never happened for me before, that a writer wrote something for me, and it's really exciting, especially coming from him. I think the thing I focused on most was his voice. Why? You know, I find the voice is what I look for first and foremost with just about every character I play. I don't have an answer why. And Bruce was really accommodating and open and collaborative in helping me do that. He recorded himself reading some of my voiceover lines so that I could hear how he would sound saying them, which I thought was really cool. And but mostly it was just hanging out with him, getting to know him, having dinner, talking about music or anything else was probably what was the most useful in trying to get a sense of what I was then gonna portray.
It's funny, I read about 30 pages of the script and I was already on the phone to my agent. Hadn't even got my character and I was like, get me in this movie. Because I loved it so much. But I did read it a few times before I met Ryan so that I could have some kind of fairly intelligent pitch for why I wanted to do the movie, because it's so rich in complexity. And conceptually it's so exciting, but also emotionally it is too. And so I think I needed a few reads of it for sure. I think it's the same for a lot of actresses, that you look for female roles that aren't objectified, that aren't simplified, that aren't simply the reactionary role to a male, you know, to a fantastic male role. And I think that I think it's harder to find that in these more sci-fi movies. And this had such a singular voice. This character had such a singular voice, you know, and she had a really rich past in which for me to kind of delve into, and she was a really tough cookie, tough nut to crack. And I enjoyed the nuances and the kind of, I think really the complexity of that part. And it was a challenge to me, and I do look for that now, because I try and mix it up as much as possible, but I really look for asking myself that question, oh my God, how am I going to do this? That's what I aspire to every time I take on a new role.
I have a pretty eclectic taste in the movies I like to watch, and also in the movies I'm inspired to work on. And I don't think action for action's sake is so fun, but when it helps tell the story, I love doing a good fight scene. And some of my favorite fight scenes I've ever done are in Brick, actually, which had no money, no scale, quote unquote, but were just really cleverly thought through and executed by Ryan. And it's also worth noting Steve Yedlin, who shot Brick as well as Looper. And yeah, we had a great time doing the action on Looper, and I think they're really fun to watch, these action sequences.
I think part of the pleasure of science fiction in general, but time travel movies specifically, they always seem to come back to these big moral questions, the would you kill Hitler questions. And they're just very good at making you confront questions like that. You know, I guess my answer to that would be the movie itself. I would say, you know, I can't articulate better my answer to some of those moral questions you raised. I can't articulate it better than I did in the movie. But yeah, in action movies, but unfortunately also in real life, this notion you can solve a problem by finding the right person and killing them. And, you know, the very title of the movie, Looper, the notion that that kind of thinking creates a self-perpetuating loop. And what can we do as human beings to break that? I mean, this sounds very highfalutin, and you know, but these are some of the things that we hopefully wrestle with a little bit in the movie.
And I think one of the first things we talked about, because my character has a certain amount of, I think, mystique and you know, ambiguity to her, and I think that when we first met, we talked about the backstory and where she came from and why she behaves in the way that she does, and so that stuff is of the first interest to me, I think, when I first take on a part.
And that's one of the highlights of the whole thing, was Bruce like seeing me for the first time and tripping out a little bit. You know, because he's he's a sweetheart. He's also like, it's hard to rattle him. He's seen a lot, and he's an understated man. You know what I mean? So to get any reaction out of him is pretty exciting. And I remember him like doing that, just like that. And just, I was so thrilled about it. And then and there was one point where we were shooting one of our scenes together, and just in between takes, just really quiet, he's like, "You sound like me," like that. I was like, "Fucking right, I do." Quietly, I didn't let him see me do that.
When I first met Joe, I arrived on set and no one had told me that he was wearing prosthetics. Or maybe I'd been told and I hadn't remembered. And this nice AD was like, it was my first day, and she went, "Would you like to meet Joe?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be great." So I go into his trailer and I'm like, and I'm staring at him, probably oddly, you know, because I couldn't figure out why he looked nothing like how I imagined. I was like, I know what Joe Gordon-Levitt looks like, and that is not it. And then I started to have a kind of brain melting experience of thinking, oh my god, I am not speaking to Joe Gordon-Levitt, I'm speaking to a stuntman or someone putting a trailer, and I'm kind of telling this guy all about my character process. You know, it was very strange, and I came out and I was like, he looks really different. And they were like, he's wearing prosthetics. But I think it's a great credit to the prosthetic guys, you know, for coming up with something that looked so realistic. It was he looked disarmingly different and not fake. You know, it was amazing.
I'm sorry.